Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. OP, you didn't lose a customer. You stopped someone wasting your time, trying to get you to do extra work for free and constantly moaning and whining. This whinge to get free stuff and the customer's always right rubbish costs businesses far too much nowadays. Best thing's to cut them off as soon as possible. Here we go. Not working long enough? Sure, I'll rack up my hours then. I worked as a cheese maker years ago. I'd never made cheese, so the owner's son taught me on the job. Well, over the next year, I became the best cheese maker this place had ever had. We made Gouda cheese, and it was delicious. I started at 6 a.m. and left when the cheese was done and things were cleaned. Well, prior to me, the cheesemaker was a 60-year-old guy and his 40-year-old assistant. I was a young 25-year-old, and my assistant was about the same age. I could make an entire batch of cheese and clean everything spotless and be done around 1 p.m. After a few months of these hours, my boss called me in to chat. She was upset that I was rushing my job and being done too soon, as the previous cheesemaker wasn't done until 3 or 4. So I asked if the quality of work or cleanliness wasn't up to par. She said it was beyond expectations and even that I have a gift for making cheese. But I want you to slow down and take your time. This was a small family-run operation, and I would process about 1,400 liters of milk a day for my cheese, so profits were slim. Well, now I decided to slow right down and add to my hours. Cheese was still done by 11 or 12, but now the cleaning, well, it took me hours. Suddenly, for the next few weeks, I was leaving around 3 or 4 because I was super casual in my cleaning. Finally, my boss pulled me in and asked why my hours were up so much since it was suddenly a big payroll bump to them over my previous. I explained, you didn't want me to go fast, and now I'm just chilling and working slower as that's what they wanted. She was upset that I was stealing time from them and didn't understand why I wanted to hurt their company. So I went back to my speediness and shorter hours. She mentioned she didn't like how fast I was a few times, but never a formal complaint about it. I left shortly after as she wasn't a good manager, and as much as I loved making cheese, it was stressful working under her. I swear, some managers can't be happy unless they have a reason to complain about their employees. You don't talk to me? That's fine. You're all suspended. When I was at this job, everyone was kind and nice, and we were just a great team. We had a chill management team, apart from one. Let's call her Judith. Judith loved writing people up and making our lives hell. Although she was just an assistant manager, she would always jump at the opportunity to manage the team for a few days if the main manager's off. Let's call this manager Bob. Bob was an easygoing person. You wouldn't really see him that often, but he was overall chill. Now, we could always handle Judith as any complaints or write-ups, etc. that she processed had to be approved by Bob or the regional manager. Let's call him Joe. Joe was the coolest guy ever. He was super effing rich, too. His wife's a realtor at a massive company. She was the COO, Chief Operating Officer at it, and she was super nice, too. Back to Joe. He wasn't just a chill manager, he was also a really great guy. He would bring us all out for beer, department with 30-plus people on someone's birthday, and would approve basically any vacation requests if you were on the right side of him, and overall, he was just a lovely boss. Now, my job was a pretty important tech job. I was in a sub-department with 4 to 5 people. We made sure that the major systems, product inventory system, POS system, website, etc., were up and running, and we controlled the servers that were connected to them all. What we didn't manage was the employee systems, email, ticketing, employee portal, etc. That was another sub-department. Now, as I was saying, we could handle Judith because basically none of her crap write-ups and complaints got listened to by Bob or Joe. Now, on this particular month, Bob was celebrating his 35th anniversary, and Joe was sick in hospital. Worst timing, I know. We all mentally prepared ourselves for Judith's wrath. This time, we were informed by Bob that any write-up, department change, or complaint didn't have to be approved by them, as Joe was also gone. We thought, no big deal, and we'll just get Bob to clear them when we come back. On to the story. We're going to take it day by day. Day 1. Judith was camping at the door. Anyone who was in after 9 a.m. was written up. I was luckily in there at 9 on the dot. So was everyone else, since we were used to Judith's shenanigans by now. I was talking to my buddy in the main software and tech department. He told me she was in there all day focusing on this one guy. Let's call him Mark. I knew Mark quite well. He was a family friend, and for some reason, Judith never liked him. She wrote him up 5 times for crappy reasons, like on cell phone during work time, making work environment unsanitary and unsafe for other employees. He left an empty plastic bottle on his desk for about an hour, etc. Did I mention he was Joe's son? Day 2. Judith was in our department today, focusing on my colleague. Let's call her Michelle. Michelle is the sweetest person in the world and would never do anything to hurt or ruin anything of anyone's, and she's just a genuine and sweet person. Judith found nothing, and when Judith confronted Michelle, she said she didn't know what she wanted, and Judith filed a complaint for backchat. Judith then hosted a department-wide meeting, so main tech and software and the 7 sub-departments. She told us that we need to stop being so rude to her just because she's a woman, blah, blah, blah. That night, I sent a message onto the management free group with everyone from the department saying not to engage with Judith. We can't get written up by her for rudeness or disrespect if we don't talk to her. Day 3. On day 3, we all come in. The day starts as usual. We all come in at the right time, so Judith has no one to write up. We head to our departments and begin work as usual. Judith wasn't focused on someone from my department, so lucky us. At about midday, we hear Judith going ape crap at someone from the department that managed the employee systems because they weren't talking to her. She kept going on and on at him, but still no response. Finally, Judith gave him one last chance before announcing the entire department's being suspended for sexism and disrespect. Our room was next to their one, so we heard everything crystal clear. Then, to Judith's surprise, everyone gathers their things and leaves without a word. I didn't get to see the look on her face, but I bet she was livid. Then she moved on to my department. She came in and told us we have to do all the work for the other department as they're all suspended, and to her dismay, no one batted an eye at her. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see her face going dark red until she got up on a chair and started screaming at us all, then counting down from 10. All of us knew what was coming, so we slowly began to log out of our things and pack up without being too obvious. By the time she got to 1, we were all ready to leave. Can you guess what was coming? If you said you're all suspended, you'd be correct. We then left. I messaged one of my buddies in the other departments, and she did the exact same thing to his department. Turns out she did it to 5 of 6 departments. The one she left was the least useful department, customer services. Yes, it's an important one, but not nearly as important as financial, development, etc. Day 4. None of us went in, bar customer services, until we got a message from Bob asking why none of us are in at work. It was the day he came back. We told him we were all suspended. He asked why, and we told him the genuine reason. He was absolutely furious at Judith and proceeded to call us all in for a staff meeting. It was really front row tickets to Judith's downfall. He proceeded to criticize her for all her false write-ups, accusations, and how she's done barely any of the roles that the assistant manager should be doing. He then fired her. Bob made us turn all the systems onto auto mode and gave us Friday off. What an awesome man. Edit. I forgot to mention that Judith cost the company almost $50,000 as some of our vital systems went down in the 6 hours they were left without being switched into auto mode. The company almost sued her for this, but they decided firing her would be better as they would be done with her. Someone who makes it their job to write people up for bullcrap reasons is no added value to the company. They're worse than useless. And our last story. Drunk neighbor Karen bangs on my door at 10:30 about her parking space. I'm lucky enough to rent a beautiful apartment in an old Victorian. There are 3 apartments and 2 businesses. I live alone on the top floor. Second floor is a nice couple. Businesses are on the first floor. And Karen, the bridge troll, lives in the basement where she belongs. It's important to note that Karen's apartment is likely illegal as there's no access to utility panels without walking through her apartment. It's also important to know my place is the most expensive one in the building, but since I'm the new tenant, I've adapted to how they do things, usually to my detriment. I've tried to make nice with basement Karen in the past. I gave her flowers when her dog passed away, invited her up when her place flooded, helped her move her new AC into her window on possibly the hottest day of the summer, etc. Karen accepted all this with fakeness, but I don't like to live in conflict, so whatever. Now, Karen had decreed that the parking spot closest to the door is hers. We have a big lot, and it's generally never a problem despite the 2 businesses on the first floor. As the new girl, I took the worst space furthest from the building and ends up in a huge puddle whenever it rains. Whatever. Occasionally, someone will park in her spot, especially people from the businesses, and she'll complain about it to the high heavens, but that's about it. I've never parked in her spot, despite the fact it's also one of the closest to my door. Whatever, Karen. So this past weekend, nice neighbors were away, so that's even one less car in the lot. A friend stopped by and we were hanging out. It didn't occur to me to ask if he parked in Karen's spot because especially after business hours, the lot only has tenants and guests in it. Wasn't raining, plenty of space. All of a sudden, we hear a commotion in the hall and drunken yelling. I listened and banging commenced, but I couldn't tell if it was on my door or the neighbors, so I went to find out, thinking maybe nice neighbors had friends who stopped by or someone was staying at their place and having trouble. As I get to my door, I can hear someone bitching about not opening the door. I open the door, and there's drunk Karen and her even more obnoxious friend. It went something like this. Me, hi, is everything okay? Drunk Karen, oh, I wanted to make sure the truck outside belongs here. Me, yes, that's my friend's. Drunk Karen's friend, it's in her space. Me, oh, sorry about that. Were you able to park on the hill? Next closest space. Karen, yes. Me, okay. Karen's friend, you need to move. Me, now? Karen's friend, yes. Me, to Karen, I'll ask him not to park there again. Shuts door, I hear more drunk shouting and a big crash, then my power cut out twice within 5 minutes. Circuit panel is, you guessed it, in the basement. Looking out the windows, no other buildings lost power, including her apartment in my building. The next day, I find the crash was a bunch of stuff in the hall had been knocked over, all of which belonged to my nice neighbor. I cleaned it up. The last straw was the following day when I hear her again outside my door apologizing to my neighbors who weren't even home when all this happened. I kind of expected at least a text, but no, Karen has stood by her obnoxious antics and not a peep has been directed at me. So I called the landlord today and told him of the possible fire issues from electrical problems I'm clearly experiencing. Looks like Karen will have tradesmen parking in her space and traipsing through her apartment to get to the electrical service for the building due to the obvious faulty wiring. Hope it doesn't need to be inspected. Be a real shame if that illegal apartment became an issue. Did I mention my guest happens to be a local electrician? F you, Karen. Have a nice day. Hey guys, thank you all for watching video. I'll see you in the next one.